We're talking actors and directors who put on the shows.
We're talking playwrights and designers who you'll want to know.
From the very first rehearsal to the final curtain call.
We might be off Broadway, but we're talking about it all.
'Cause we're two local gals
with global pals. It's everything, everything, everything theater.
with Benita
And Ellen. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Everything Theater Podcast, the podcast where we talk about
Everything Theater. Hi, everybody. I'm Benita Zahn.
And I am Ellen Cribbs. And it's,
We're back in the same city.
yes, I know you've been so busy, Benita. You've been doing Sheer Madness.
I've been out in the Majestic, and now you're getting ready to open in Park Playhouse, a Playhouse Stage Company in Washington Park.
Yeah.
Momentarily in Oklahoma.
Yes, so excited and can't wait for rehearsal tonight where it's a little cooler. The last 2 days have been pretty hot.
We joke, we're going to get to Danny Gardner in a sec. When you perform outside, a number of years ago, we did Kiss Me Kate, and it was a blistering hot summer. And in that show, you're wearing these big, heavy costumes. And by about the third week in the run, we joked that the costumes just walked themselves into the corner.
Yep.
And nothing you can do. They must have gone through a couple of quarts of vodka, because if you're not initiated in theater, you mix a vodka spray, it takes care of them.
Yeah, and we just walked through Farmer and the Cowman the other night, and I was bright red. I was like, oh no, I wasn't fully dancing, wasn't fully singing, not in costume. It'll be great. I'm excited.
And then we're welcoming Danny Gardner, who knows all about singing in costume. And hopefully most of the time, Danny, it's in a controlled environment.
Yes, mostly. Although for my first time last year, I did my first show at the Muni, and that was a lot of fun, but outside, and we had some hot days.
To point out, Danny is touring now with Beauty and the Beast. He's Lumiere, and the tour kicks off right here. And because at Proctor's, you got checked out in Proctor's, and then you hit the road, and your wife is in the show with you.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. We have had the wonderful luck to both be in the show. And we have a 11-week-old son who is with us, and our dog, Maple. So it's a family affair, and luckily our in-laws, my in-laws, Emily's parents, are retired, and they have come out, and they've been with us in rehearsals in New York, and they're going to be with us through the next 2 cities. So while we're at the show, during rehearsals, they've been taking care of Jack, our son.
How wonderful.
Wow.
I think most people think you hit the road and you're leaving it sayonara to family for weeks on end. Well, although you could probably use a day or two, right?
Yeah. Look, and usually that is the way it is. But with Jack, we needed, help. And luckily, Emily's parents were retired, and they said, we were going to travel the country anyway. So now we can do it with our grandson. And then when they leave, my mom is going to come out. And so we have, nieces that said they might come out, nephews that said, so we're cobbling it together.
That's so wonderful to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think it's, we don't talk about this much, but I think a lot of people feel, life in the theater is prohibitive to have a family, especially when you're traveling a lot and working a lot. So I don't know, you're only 11 weeks in, but do you want to talk a little bit about the experience of kind of being on the road with your son?
Yeah, we luckily talked to some other families that have toured, and we talked to a couple on Lion King who toured again with Disney. And first of all, they said Disney is great for families. They are there to support you. There's a mother's group, there's a father's group, there's all these wonderful things. And our company manager, Maya, called us a few weeks before we started rehearsal, and she said, what do you need? Touring itself is crazy, but touring with an infant is even crazier. So let us know what you need. They've been so supportive. And it's been, the first few weeks, he was 5.5 weeks when we started rehearsal. So first of all, my wife is a superwoman. The fact that she said, yes, I'm gonna have the baby, and then 5.5 weeks later, we're gonna go into dancing and singing, and it's just her recovery was just amazing because she, first of all, wanted to do it, but was so serious about training and the postpartum work that she did, and I'm. Flabbergasted by her every time she does the show. And she's like, yeah, it's fine. I'm like, okay, you're amazing. But yeah, so that has been amazing. But then we literally would not be able to do it without Emily's parents, Tom and Patty. They have been taking care of laundry and cooking and taking care of Jack and our dog. And they have a dog. So there are two dogs. It's just, they have been amazing. And it's, he likes to get up at 5 a.m. So we've been in tech rehearsals and he does not care. He will get up at 5 a.m. and then we feed him. And luckily he goes back down for a few hours and then we switch on and off. Sometimes I get to sleep in and Emily will go take Jack. And then the next day I will get up and Emily will sleep in. And we had a rotation where it just so happened that I slept in today, so that was nice. But
Danny, I think what we're hearing is it's a very different world now than, say, 10 years ago when it came to performing and having a life. And I think I'm also hearing a subtext is that Emily's going to be putting together a video on how to get your body back in shape after
right,
having a baby,
absolutely, yeah.
I
And
gotta ask you, because I'm the keeper of the time. Your dancing is fabulous. You and Ellen are college mates.
yeah,
And were you trained before you went off to college? Or, we've interviewed Richard Gada, who's local to the Albany area, and you may be familiar with him. And Richard learned how to dance out of high school. And so proficiently, he was a dance captain. So where do you fit on that, sliding scale? And you're
yeah.
great, by the way.
Thanks. I started when I was 6 years old. The story that I always tell is that I have an older brother and a younger sister, and I would come home, and when I was younger, I had a lot of energy and be bouncing off the walls. And so my parents said, we need to put him in an activity that will tire him out. So originally, they put me in acrobatics at the dance studio, and I did that for a semester. I didn't really like it, and I was about to quit. And then the owner of the studio said, we're starting an all boys tap class. You should try that. So I tried that and I liked it. And then the joke was on my parents because they had an energetic 6-year-old running around the house with tap shoes on. But yeah, ever since then I started with tap dance and then I took jazz and then ballet and then voice lessons. And it just kind of kept rolling, community theater shows in middle school and high school. And then I went to Ithaca with Ellen.
Let's talk a little bit about your journey from Ithaca to Beauty and the Beast now. So where have you been? What was the adventure like once you got out of Ithaca?
Yeah, I when I first got out, I did a lot of regional work. I luckily got a tour about, I don't know, probably about a year after I graduated college. I got the non-equity tour of 42nd Street. So I was with that a little bit. And then I just started auditioning for regional theaters. And then I moved to New York in 2007. And then the joke is that you move to New York so you can work outside of New York. um, because that's where a lot of the regional theaters go to audition. And so for about 10 years, I was just cutting my teeth and getting as many credits as I could and working with choreographers and directors, so they could get to know me. And then 10 years after I graduated, I made my Broadway debut in Dames at Sea. And then after that, I did a few more Broadway shows. But once I got the Dames at Sea, it gave me the availability to play larger roles regionally, which was really nice. And then I did Flying Over Sunset at Lincoln Center, and then A Christmas Carol on Broadway, and then still working regionally. And then about a year ago, I auditioned for Beauty and the Beast. And luckily, it was with a director, the associate director, Sam Scalamoni. He is the associate director of Beauty and the Beast. And I had worked with him on another project So it's always nice to have somebody behind the table that can, speak to your credits and know your work. And so he was a big proponent with, and luckily he had worked with Emily too. Emily had done the Elf National Tour, which Sam directed also. So he knew both of us, and he was really instrumental to getting us into the show.
So talking of Beauty and the Beast, this is been 25 years since it's toured in the Northeast, right? So what's it like to take on these iconic roles? I mean, Lumiere, like we all have an idea of how that character is from the movie and then the other movie. And so how do you as a performer approach a role that is so iconic and such a classic story?
It can be daunting. I grew up. I Beauty and the Beast hit right at the time when I was obsessed with Disney, and watching Be Our Guest for the first time in the movie theater was just amazing. And then I wore out the cassette tape on my Walkman, listening to all the songs, and but I just always loved Jerry Orbach's version of Lumiere, and so that was kind of imprinted on me. And so when I got the role, I watched both versions, the live action and then the animated feature. Um, but then, they adapted it in a way that it is different than the movie. Of course, that's the source material. But then Linda Wolverton, who wrote the original and this stage play, she came and she talked a little bit about where the characters came from. And that was really interesting, and what it was based off of, and the original tale and things like that. So it's it's one of those things where people have a conceived notion when they come in, and my goal is to honor that and hopefully maybe add a little bit to it. Because it is different than the show. There's Be Our Guest is different. Some of the scenes are different. So honoring it as much as you can and then adding what you can is the exciting part for me.
I'm turning away just because I've got like a train going through here. An office in the front of the house, and somebody's come to the door, and the dog has come in. It's like I've got another play going on here, which is, all about focus. Danny, if you had to do it again, would you go on tour at this point in your life with the baby and all that?
So far it's been amazing. And I have to say, when we knew we were pregnant, and we got the tour, when I told my side of the family specifically, the amount that they withheld under their smiles was concerning, because it was that feeling of yeah, we're gonna have a 5-week-old, and we're gonna go on a national tour for a year, and their smile just got bigger and bigger as, oh wow, how exciting for you. And of course, it's scary. There's so many things. The company is responsible for finding housing. However, they're responsible for finding hotels. Well, that doesn't always work for us. We'd like a stove. So we have to find housing a lot of the time. So the logistics are the thing that are the most difficult, which is difficult and daunting.
How do
But
you manage well baby visits?
we there are certain ones where we just scheduled Jack's 4 month. Um, and it really is just, usually we heard that pediatricians like to have the same clients, like you come back. But luckily, Deborah Coy, who's our pediatrician in New Jersey, she said, "Oh, I have lots of Broadway people, and they go on tour. And like, if you have any problems, give me a call. We will work it out." But finding other pediatricians where we are going so far has been okay. So knock on wood that it keeps being as successful. But yeah, being proactive and knowing like, okay, 4 months, he needs these vaccines and things like that. And then 6 months and looking down the line. But the one thing I'll say about the business is, if Emily and I were so lucky, say a year ago, to both get Broadway shows, with specific Broadway shows, you don't know if it's a year contract, if it's 3 month contract, if it's a 6 month contract. So in a way, saving money on rent. We don't have an apartment, getting per diem for food, and having a year-long commitment is a great way to save money. And so in a way, it's a really wonderful thing to be able to be a part of.
Do you, as you're on the road, do you need to keep taking classes? What do you do about your health? And you're playing a lot of roles, not just Lumiere.
Yeah. Um, yeah, right now we're just getting to the point where we feel we can run the show, at least for me. We just finished tech. We had our first audience last night. And so we're getting to the point where we can let go of the process a little, which is exciting. But also, the great thing that the company does is they also find gyms for us. So that's a big part of, maintaining the body. But also, talking to my therapist and things like that, um, and also finding time for ourselves. We try to make it very evident to Tom and Patty, my in-laws, that you need space yourself. Like, tell us when this is too much, and we will take him. And then, we need time too. Even when we get home, we've been working all day. We want to see Jack, but then we're tired too. So it's that ebb and flow. And I think the biggest thing that's been really helpful is communicating. And that has been, a learning curve too. But that everybody's really, really committed to helping Jack and helping each other. So far, it's been really wonderful, finding that balance.
It's interesting you talk about the um, day-to-day being on tour versus the to know what's going to happen on Broadway.
Right?
And performers are like, Broadway, give me Broadway.
Yeah.
When you make it to Broadway, it sounds like it's not, Nirvana. It's great, but it's not Nirvana. You're still looking down the road.
Yeah, I mean, I think I had a misconception when I was very young, like say 10 or 12. I had that in my head, like, well, I'll make it to Broadway and then everything will be great. I'll buy a house and I'll have a family and and it's for example, my first show, Dames at Sea, unless it's a limited run. For example, both the other shows I did on Broadway, Flying Over Sunset and Christmas Carol, those are limited runs. So at a point, like, okay, well, I have to start looking for work. But Dames at Sea was open-ended. They were like, we have the theater, we're going to run as long as we can. And it ran for 4 months. And so you never know, like, for example, unfortunately, Boop just announced that they're closing. And so you hope that it runs, you get a Wicked or a Lion King or something that runs forever and you can stay with the company as long as you want. And sometimes that's not possible. Sometimes the creative team, after a year or whatever, they say, I think we're gonna find someone else. And so you never know. But that misconception that I definitely had, I had to come to terms with when Dames at Sea closed. Of I thought I'd be set. And in a way, for your career and resume, it's very helpful. But it's not the end all be all. If you love performing, you're always in a way going to be looking for work. And there's a beautiful side of that, and there's a realistic, difficult side of that.
You're great, Matt. Many years ago at Park Playhouse, I was Ruby. No, that's his partner, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was Ruby.
Uh,
Trust me, my tapping is nothing like your partner was. But Jeffrey Graham Doig,
uh-huh.
Jeffrey, I think I've got it right. Yeah, he's an artist
Yeah.
and phenomenal dancer. He teaches at Marymount. We should get him
Oh,
on, Edwin. And he was lucky. And there's a picture of us, from a very long time ago.
yeah.
But it's a great role, and it's a fun show. It's a happy show.
Yeah.
And happy, as Ellen and I have learned in talking to folks, directors, artistic directors from across the country, happy is still very much front and center for audiences.
Mm.
And along with that, Danny, let me ask, I recently was in New York, and we talked about this also, and I saw Death Becomes Her. And was great. It was a young house, and the effort is to bring in young audiences, but they treat it more like a concert than
Mm,
a theatrical performance.
yeah.
And there is more hooting and hollering,
Hmm.
and maybe talking back.
Yeah.
It's not the sit down and accept a performance. It's more of a contact sport.
Right.
Share with us what that's like as a performer. Are you seeing that? And yeah, where do we go?
Yeah, it's so interesting. I think before about a year and a half ago, I did Dial M for Murder, which was a play, and I was so happy to do a play because don't get me wrong, I love singing and dancing, but I love just acting also. Um, and I think it's on I think it comes down to me at least on the venue, but also the piece. For example, one of the shows that I did was at Radio City Music Hall. I did they were trying to create a summer show also. So they had the Christmas show and then they were trying to create an annual summer show. And the very first time um, I, my entrance was we run into the center of Radio City and we say a few lines and then we run off. Well, I thought it was like a regular theatrical venue. And it's Radio City, so it's huge. So I ran out, and as soon as I ran out, people were talking at full voice. They had their iPads with lights on, recording everything. And, they were eating popcorn and things. And in a way, I was like, oh, this is a different venue. And it's interesting because that's what that show and that venue and that audience almost goes there for. Um, uh, it's like the difference between like the circus and Dial M for Murder. And so this show, Beauty and the Beast, the amount of we haven't gotten like of people talking back, but we've definitely just from last night, people are responding and hooting and hollering, and I think it really depends on the piece. Now, Dial M for Murder, it was very, very quiet and very subdued. But there were moments where it was, so I think if you think of all the way back to, like Shakespeare's Globe, I mean, talk about the groundlings. Like they yelled and threw things at the actors and talked back. And so I think it ebbs and flows, that interaction with the audience. And a lot of what theaters and maybe artistic directors and directors now are thinking about are the experience. Like for example, you look at the cabaret revival that they did, and immersive theater. And I think, in a way, it's to get younger audiences and to get this new generation into the seats. So, um,
Well,
yeah,
When
speaking
they
of
did
new,
Oklahoma at Circle in the Square, they
yeah,
at intermission, everybody ate. You know,
yeah.
Ellen, what are you guys going to do?
we're not eating.
Nobody's cooking.
Nobody's cooking. Yeah, but we're prepared. Yeah, we're
Yeah, but
prepared for
that's what they
some
did.
feedback. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting with Beauty and the Beast because speaking of new generations, I mean, this is a children's show. So to see not only the new generation of young parents, but then their children bringing them to a show. I remember my first professional show, I saw Cats in London, and my
Hmm.
mom said, "You cannot talk during this show. You have to, if you have questions, you clock them, and at the end you can say, what was this? What was that?" And I sat there on my hand, like counting my questions to remember to ask at the end of the show.
uh,
So I'm curious, nowadays, what are parents telling their kids about attending the theater? Is it you had to be completely quiet or enjoy the show? My daughter's seeing Beauty and the Beast on Sunday, and I've told her to stay quiet, but she is easily frightened. So if there's any scary bits, you will hear a child screaming.
yeah,
That will
yeah.
be her.
Yeah. No, and there are some scary bits, and I heard even last night it was just their first show with an audience, but I heard kids like saying things, and I think there's a beautiful part of that because it is interactive. It's not TV, and I think having that interaction can be fun. And also, so Emily, one of the side gigs that she did was she was a nanny for a family, and in New York, and they would go to theater all the time. And they started taking their kids, their two children, David and Lily, to theater very early. But they would practice going to theater. So if it was a show they were going to see, they would watch the movie of it before, and they had to go in, they had to watch, and then when they had an intermission, and they weren't allowed to talk, so they practiced, and so the etiquette of theater, and that's specific to that family, and I think, they were very serious about it, and they said, this is how you go to theater, and they taught them, and I think that's great. I think that's fun. And then there's the other aspect of people who are bringing their kids and they've never been to a show, and I think that's just as valid to say we're going to experience this together. And, you know, whether the audience polices themselves or they just say, this is where we're at. I think, it takes all kinds to fill that audience.
Yeah.
It's easy traveling in a weird way with an infant because you create the right.
Exactly. Yeah.
As a toddler,
Yeah.
Are you and Emily thinking that far down the road?
Well, we signed on for a year. So by that time he'll be, a year and I think 2 months or 3 months. And we will evaluate then, if having consistent work is fantastic, but also, being realistic with, well, it's different. It's not going to be, everybody was joking, well, it's easy with an infant. They're just a sack of potatoes. You just carry them, you sit them there, and then.
And they don't move.
Exactly. But it is different the older they get. So we are thinking, a little down the line because it will become more difficult. And I'm sure, our family will be a little bit more tired of saying, hey, do you want to come out to, Schenectady again? And, but yeah, I think we actually talked to Rob McClure because him and his wife took their 3-year-old on the last leg of Mrs. Doubtfire, and they said we had to negotiate a nanny because at that point, if the company wanted them, they said this is what we need. So yeah, we'll kind of cross that bridge when we come to it, but we are trying to think that far.
You then shift to more screen work, television, movies.
Sorry, what was that?
I said, do you then shift to more screen work?
Yeah, I mean, that would be, I would love to do that. I've auditioned for a few screen things, but I've never really been that successful. I think I might have too big of a personality. But yes, I think that could be wonderful. But TV and film is having its own kind of big fluctuations right now. So that, in a year, maybe that'll be more settled and we can go into that because I would love to do that.
So
I'm looking at the time, Benita.
Yes, that's exactly where I'm headed. I know we got a little bit of it because of dance, but Ellen, take it away.
Yes, at the end of our episode, we like to do a little close-up segment where we just do some rapid-fire questions all about you, Danny. So are you ready for your close-up?
Let's do it.
So when was the moment in your life where you just knew I have to do theater?
When I was in my very first show, it was at high school, but I was in elementary school in Maine. They needed a little boy to come out at the end. It's Peter's son, and I got to swear on stage. And I got a laugh, a big laugh from the audience, and I said, oh, this is what I want to do.
What show has had the biggest impact on your life, whether it's one that you were involved with or one that you just grew up with and loved?
I think it was my first Broadway show, Dames at Sea, because wanting that goal and wanting to get to Broadway, but not getting it until 10 years after college, while I was watching some of my other colleagues and classmates, get Broadway very quickly. I think that solidified in me that no, I can do this. I'm in the right place. And the director choreographer Randy Skinner really pushed for me to play a principal when I had never been on Broadway, and that was a big thing for me at that time. So I think that one really, really personally and theatrically really helped.
What are some bucket list roles that you have?
I would love to play George in Sunday in the Park, and uh, I'd love to do well, the baker in Into the Woods, and then All My Sons. I love that show.
Oh. Let's see. What's your advice to someone who is, let's say, fresh out of college, looking to make that Broadway goal? What's your advice to them?
Create your own work, show up on time, be nice to people, and don't be afraid to be yourself. Yeah, be individual and really get down to the core of who you are and how you want to create the role and do the show.
How about for a funny one, what's the biggest blooper you've ever had on stage?
Um, I I was doing a show with a physical comedy theater group called Parallel Exit, and we added a song at the end, and it was a novelty song from the 1920s, and I was like, no, 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 I got the lyrics, I got the lyrics, and we started, and I sang the intro and forgot all of the lyrics, so I just started scatting like Louis Armstrong. I just it was the whole song, the whole song. And the other guys on stage were like, what are you doing? So it was just, yeah, that was the entire rest of the song.
Excellent. And we are close on time, but how many cities are you hitting on this tour? Do you remember?
I don't. It's quite a lot. I mean, we go down south to Texas. We go all the way to LA. It has to be, oh gosh, over 35.
It's a lot of clothes.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, that should be a quick question. How do you pack for a year-long tour?
Well, so our dog is too big to fly, so we are driving. And you can follow our adventures on Instagram at 4 in a Forester because we drive a Subaru Forester. And and the very first time we packed from New York to here, we way overpacked. So we got a Thule car topper, and that's been very helpful. But even with that, when I got here, I had to get rid of a bunch of clothes and let go of some other things because I don't need them while I'm on tour.
Excellent. You guys are in Schenectady until July 3rd. So everyone go check out Beauty and the Beast.
Yes.
And a local performer and someone that Ellen works with at U Albany, Von Perry, saw your preview, your tech last night.
Oh, nice.
Indicated there were some tech things that still needed a little work, but was engaged and enchanted and loved it.
Oh, good, good. That's
My friend
awesome.
Katie Weinberg, who's another Ithaca grad, she saw it and her husband turned to her and was like, that guy playing Lumiere is great. She's like, oh, wait till he taps. And then they saw your tapping. He was like, oh my God.
Oh, that's awesome.
So yeah, go check it out, everybody. It's going to be a great time. This has been delightful. Thank you so much, Danny, and all the best on your tour and your adventures. It's so exciting.
Legs across the board.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Listen, we don't know him, but give that little baby up for Ellen and I, will you?
I definitely will.
Danny Gardner, thanks so very much. And thank you all for spending a little time with us for this episode of Everything Theater. If you haven't already, drop us a like, tell your friends about it. And we got a lot more good stuff coming up. And Ellen, break legs.
Thank you so much. We'll see you soon. I'm Ellen Cribbs.
And I'm Benita Zahn. Take care.
Thank you so much for listening to the Everything Theater podcast. Special thanks goes out to Alice Grinling for our photography and Justin Friello for composing our amazing theme song. Please remember to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you want to share your thoughts or what's going on in your theater community, you can reach out to us on social media or through our email at everythingtheaterpodcast@gmail.com. Till next time, it's everything, everything, everything.